Censorship is a slippery slope. If you give companies an inch, they'll take a mile, and that's why it's so important to call out any instance of censorship, even if it is against a company that you generally like or that you generally support. In the case of Nintendo and Steam, most of us use those platforms. Most of us enjoy those platforms, and it is hard to find an alternative to a Nintendo that's creating really high quality, fun, lighthearted experiences, or it is kind of difficult to find a PC platform that offers so much variety, that has a millions and millions of games on it. But we do still need to call out this BS whenever it occurs, and recently we had found out that the Steam rules were updated to prohibit content that violates rules set forth by payment processors and banks. Now, I have talked about this situation in multiple other videos. I did one specifically on Nintendo and one that was on Steam and also Nintendo. And of course, this company, well, both of these companies are facing major backlash right now. And I wanted to do a follow-up because this is just such a worrying situation. Now, in my other video, kind of talking about both of these companies updating their rules to very vague outlines that could mean heavy censorship upon developers, I did talk a lot about the credit card companies, but I think that we need to put more of a focus on this and just how worrying this truly is. I had talked about how in the past, credit card companies had actually been heavily censoring Japanese artists, so much so that a website or a platform, which is Ken Akamatsu's Manga Library Z, a website which hosted old and out-of-print manga as a method of archival and ad revenue sharing with artists, as well as Melon Books, a Japanese book retailer, actually had to be shut down entirely because of credit card companies continuing to censor Japanese artists. And there was really no way around them for this because they had basically said they looked at alternatives and it just wouldn't have been profitable enough. They really needed those funds, and as soon as they got cut off, they had to be shut down entirely. We've been seeing this happen for quite a few years at this point, and now it looks like it's going to happen to everybody, not just Japanese creators or not just creators in certain regions, but Steam in general, Nintendo in general. So Valve has updated its rules regarding content that developers aren't allowed to publish on Steam, as reported by GameSpark. The rules and guidelines section of Steamworks documentation now has an extra clause, and it suggests that publishers are required to comply with rules and standards set forth by various third parties involved in processing electronic payments. The rule seems to be predominantly related to adult content. Content that may violate the rules and standards set forth by Steam's payment processors and related card networks and banks or internet providers, in particular, certain kinds of adult-only content. Now, prior to the update, the list included 14 clauses prohibiting things like hate speech, malware, sexual content depicting real people, and any form of exploitation of children. All illegal things, which is understandable. It says, though, the new 15th clause suggests that Steam may additionally have to crack down on specific types of adult content in response to the requirements of payment processors and banks. And Nintendo did something very similar, where they basically said overly sexual content could end up being removed. And unfortunately, this is a very slippery slope, because I do think that part of this blame does still need to go on Steam and Nintendo. Over the past couple of years, I've talked about this many times on the channel, they have forced censorship upon developers. They have banned games outright, and they are extremely inconsistent in the way that they implement their rules, if they even really have any set of rules internally for their employees to follow. One day, a hentai game might get banned, and the next day you might submit that hentai game and it might be accepted. They are extremely inconsistent. Sony is pretty bad in terms of this as well, but that just shows that over the past couple of years, these platforms have been censoring content themselves, aside from having the worry of payment processors and credit card companies. So they do still deserve a lot of the blame here, but a lot of this blame does need to go on these credit card companies, and censorship at the hands of payment processors, networks, or anyone else outside of Steam and Nintendo itself could be a massive issue going forward if these companies decide to alter their own rules and standards even further. Again, they have been pretty heavy in their censorship over the past couple of years, but I think that it could get significantly worse. And a major problem that I personally have is that there's so much disrespect here towards developers from both Nintendo and Valve. When you have broad terms used like overly sexual content, that is a major red flag. When you don't tell developers in advance that their content could be removed, and in some cases this is the developer's livelihood, that is a red flag. It's a big problem. Is the process of getting your game on Steam going to be extremely different now? Is it going to be even more difficult? Are they going to be even tougher on all content that's published on their platforms? I know Steam is massive, and I know a lot of people use the platform. I do, of course. So naturally, I do want to give them a chance, and I know so many other people are going to want to give them a chance and point the blame 100% elsewhere, but I don't think that that is fair. And yes, I know a lot of the blame does go to credit card companies, but the vague wording all around is extremely worrying to me. And I think that it is extremely worrying to a lot of people given how much backlash they're facing on social media right now. How many people are saying this could become a major problem going forward. Right now, Steam is primarily removing like interactive sex games, things like Sex Village, Slave of the Police Officer, like a BDSM sex games, but it does become a very slippery slope if adult content is simply targeted. I mean, games like Cyberpunk could fall into that. We have gore, we have violence, we have sex, we have nudity. Games like Mortal Kombat, for their extreme violence, could end up being censored or even straight up like a banned off of these platforms. I know in those cases they make these platforms a heck of a lot of money, so I don't necessarily think that those would be the first to go, but you can't sit here and say, well, a little bit of censorship is okay, at least in my opinion, because, well, one day, even if that day isn't today, content that you want to consume could potentially be altered and toned down and unfortunately censored. This is, of course, again, extremely worrying, and a lot of people are voicing how unhappy they are with this. I will never approve of censorship being driven by these payment processors, and this isn't the first time that this has happened. Payment processors have been deciding what charities or political parties you can donate to for years, and now it's just what you can purchase and what stores you can really shop at. I mean, in 2010, Visa and MasterCard blocked donations to WikiLeaks. That is like a very prominent case that I know a lot of people are probably going to be using now. In comparison, they have been extremely controlling for a long time now, and we're just seeing it seep into our entertainment. That's why it is important to call out these situations whenever we can. Now, again, I don't like all of the content on Steam, right? I'm never gonna play, incest twins or BDSM sex sim. Like, I'm not somebody who's ever going to play these or buy these. And I know a lot of other people say, well, it's only a little bit of content, so it's okay. I'm just extremely worried about what could happen in the future. Oh, for fuck's sake, this is why we need alternative payment processors. They control the keys. So it begins. I may not agree with this type of game. I'm not going to say it deserves to get banned. I'd rather see these concepts get explored in fiction than IRL. So to me, this is censorship, and it hasn't gone through any sort of legal process. It's private entities exerting will in a legal gray area. This shows the danger of oligopic control over payments. Did Steam even consider onboarding a less restrictive payment provider and allow these games affected to still be available? Of course not. Don't bend the knee to censorship. This will never stop until it's rendered illegal. So I'll definitely be keeping my eye on the situation. I, like many other people, think that this is absolutely absurd, and it is something that we need to continue to call out. We have seen platforms completely closed down in the past because they have lost out on so much revenue because of these payment processors. And now we're seeing Steam and Nintendo going through the same exact thing. They have been censoring content for years, and this is what happens when you do not actually stand up for your developers and say, nope, we will stand by them and their content. But now we're finding out that they are all updating their rules to prohibit content that violates rules set forth by payment processors and banks. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you all again in the next video really soon.